Thank you, Allison. I'm happy to be here, and I think maybe I talked too much last time because I can hear my voice and it sounds a little raspy. So I wanted to talk to you today about perfectionism, and I want to keep you open to the title, Be Still and Know. So I want you to think about that, what that means to you, and how you can apply that phrase in what I want to share with you today. So when I started into private practice, one of the first things I quickly learned or recognized when somebody comes into my office, this is one thing I want them to walk out knowing, who they are. Because it gets really confusing when our emotions run high. We lose that sense of who we are. And so that is where I'm going to begin today to give you an idea. And if you think you know who you are, you do, I'm sure you do. But see if you can get to know yourself a little bit better and how you might be responding to life. So the next objective is increased understanding of perfectionism and what drives perfectionism. I don't see perfectionism as a problem. I see perfectionism as a symptom of other underlying problems that I hope we have enough time to explore today. I want to improve your knowledge and relationship with your brain, mind, and body. It really is a gift. And hopefully learn a little bit about how to support yourself and others. And if you leave here without laughing a little, I apologize and come talk to me. Because I try to make this as light as possible. We will be talking about fear and shame. And if there's one way to put a room to sleep, is to talk about shame. So I'll try to keep it as lively and respectful as possible. Okay, the next thing I want to invite you to do is find your why and what for today. What do you want to get out of our time together? One of my favorite sayings is, you're not your brain, you have a brain. And we want to know that and understand that so we can ask it to help us in accomplishing our goals and intentions. Intention puts us on the path for sustained growth and progress. This is where you tell your brain, ask your brain to support you in what you're wanting to get out of the next 45 minutes together and take home with you. So even if something I say doesn't resonate truth for you, I hope it at least gets you thinking about other things that do, so that you can make the most of our time together. So I want to get curious as you think about who I am. I want to invite you to tap into your observing mind. That part in your internal experience that is noticing what's going on the inside of you and on the outside. As you think about your divine identity and putting this into context, and I don't know who said it, but that we are spiritual beings having an earthly experience. So see if you can think about that spiritual being inside of each one of us, inside of yourself, that part of you that came to earth, and that part of you that leaves earth when your body goes into the ground. That's how I like to look at it. You might see it another way, and that's perfectly okay. I want you to appreciate your neurodiversity. Approximately 117 billion people have lived on the earth, and only one of those is you. That's pretty amazing. So really appreciating the rare and valuable possession that you are. So I'm going to give you an additional challenge too, if you want to. You certainly don't have to. I want to invite you to get curious about the parts of you, it won't be all of you, the parts of you that feel more perfectionistic, or that might be driving some ideas around perfectionism and how you should look, act, and behave. And see if you can do that from a place of compassion for yourself and for your own personal growth. Nobody comes into this world knowing everything, and nobody will leave this world knowing everything. So sometimes when we can not take ourselves so seriously, we can actually go a little farther. So I'm going to invite you to get curious, like a little kid. But I want to talk about how our bodies automatically respond to life. So I'm going to ask you to engage with me in a few little activities. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to say a word, and you can close your eyes or keep them open. I want you to tell me what comes up for you when I say this word. Apple. What do you automatically notice? You might notice an image. You might notice an experience. You might notice grandma's apple pie. What comes up for you when I say the word apple?
Red.
Red. Anybody else?
Sweet.
Sweet. Tree. Tree. Eat. Teacher. Oh, yeah. That's a new one. I love it. A beautiful red apple. Mine's always green. Every time I do this, it's green. And I don't like green apples. I like red ones. Isn't that interesting? Were you going to say something?
Say a company.
A company. Oh, they've got a lot of my money. I don't want to think about Apple. I'm going to change that. So that's one, our visual system. And not everybody even has a mind's eye. So appreciating that. Some people do, and I think most people do, and some people don't, and that's okay. But understanding more about your internal experience. Okay, I've got the next one for you. I want you to imagine skydiving, jumping out of an airplane, maybe being pushed out of an airplane. What does your body, how does it respond? I'm looking at a face back here like, no way. Terror. Oh, Jill is all in. I love her. We're going, Jill. I turned 48 this year, and I challenged myself and jumped out of an airplane. It was a wee. It was awesome. But it took some therapy to get me there. Okay. How about this one? I want you to imagine being yelled at by your boss with other colleagues around. Unless you've been traumatized that way, then don't do it. But it's too late now. I've already said it. But imagine what that might feel like, what that did feel like. I think a lot of us, if we've held a job, have gotten in trouble from a boss or been a disappointment from time to time. What do you notice in your body there? Panic. Tense. Where do you feel the tense in your body? Everywhere. Yeah. And the crazy thing is, we're all just sitting here enjoying and having a wonderful day. But that's how powerful our thoughts are, or the power of suggestion. Just some strange lady, having you imagine that, your body responds. So your body's working really hard to keep you safe. And our imaginations don't always help it. Okay. I did this activity last time, but I think it took up too much time. So I'm just going to throw out some warheads. And if you catch one, you got to participate, okay? If you don't want to participate, don't catch it. Oh. Okay, Dr. T, this comes for you. Okay. Bombs away. Sorry if I hit you. I do have malpractice insurance. Now, I want you to compare the warhead to life experiences. Now, just looking at this, some of you your mouth might already be watering. Do you want me to throw more? No. We do impact each other, for better or worse, right? This is a great way to understand who you are versus what you're feeling. So if you are having a bad day and you're like, I don't even know who I am anymore, put this in your mouth and you'll have a little bit of a reality check because you're not the sour. You're the one noticing the sour. You're the observer of that sour. So as you think of that experience, putting this in your mouth. So if anybody's put this in their mouth yet, anybody put it in their mouth? Mm-hmm. All right. Now look at his face. Isn't it adorable? We want to see that we automatically respond to life. And with that, it's not always comfortable. But what happens the longer you sit with the discomfort? It's easy when it's a warhead. It's not as easy when it's emotions or a really tough struggle. But the concept is still the same, learning how to sit with and be with what's going on inside of you and get curious. Because how's the warhead tasting now?
It's getting a little better.
It's getting a little better. Starts to fade. And actually, as we process and work with emotions, I think of them as like a dark tunnel. On the other side is the light. And so it's building the ability to work through those emotions that feel like a dark tunnel. And sometimes we need somebody's hand to hold. But learning how to be still, know who you are, and approach those feelings and sensations in your body. So, you're not your thoughts, feelings, or behavior. Those all change. You're the constant. So I'm going to ask you a question as we talk about these automatic responses to life. What do you think that has to do with perfectionism? Anybody have an answer?
It's an adaptation so you don't have to feel the discomfort.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's an automatic adaptation. A lot of times we're not choosing this consciously. Your body's working really hard so you don't have to feel the discomfort. And it's trying to keep you safe. Thank you. So, perfectionism, what is it? And if you're looking at this picture wondering what that is a very narrow path that people walk on. I'll show you in the next slide. Perfectionism puts us on this path that feels very narrow, almost like we're going to be annihilated if we veer from it. So, and ironically enough, there isn't even a perfect definition of perfectionism. So we want to see that there's a lot of ways to define perfectionism, just like there's a lot of ways to define your life. Perfectionism is the pursuit of flawlessness. Perfectionism is broadly defined as a combination of excessively high personal standards and overly critical self-evaluation. Perfectionism is rooted in fear and insecurity. And it manifests differently for different people, too. Perfectionism can also look like procrastination and people-pleasing. Now, with procrastination, sometimes we can feel very overwhelmed by our task at hand because we're trying to do every single step perfectly all at once. And it's very overwhelming and can shut us down. And we'll be looking for other things to do besides the task at hand. And people-pleasing is really big because the dysregulation that comes from saying no or having needs and a voice can be really painful for people and can feel like they're going to be annihilated. So perfectionism takes cues, or I put that in quotes because I don't like the label. Perfectionists, I think that most of us will have parts of us, it might manifest in different areas of our life that are perfectionists. And there's healthy striving and there's perfectionism. There's a difference too. Perfectionists take cues of how they should look, behave, and think from others. And this is a great segue into what I want to lead into. And this is a quote from Brene Brown. When perfectionism is driving, shame is always riding shotgun. So shame is a part of perfectionism. So we cannot have a conversation about perfectionism without appreciating the input from shame. And fear is the annoying backseat driver. We struggle with perfectionism in areas we feel most vulnerable to shame. And that would be like we struggle with perfectionism in the ways that we fear being judged, rejected, ridiculed, even if it's not reality. It is a way of thinking that says if I live perfect, look perfect, and work perfect, I can avoid or minimize criticism, blame, and ridicule. So that's going to lead us into our next topic of fear and shame. Now, there's one thing I forgot to do. Should have been in the first group. I had all this better prepared. But I did run out of time, so I'm hoping to save time. The other part of appreciating neurodiversity, and I want to bring these out. I don't know if you've ever seen these sensory spiky rings. These are fun. They feel good for people, and some people don't like them at all. But I'm going to put some, I can throw them out if you want. But what I did before is I just had people run it up and down their finger and scan your body from head to toe to notice if it feels good, if it feels calming. Somebody said it was therapeutic. One person said it just feels like a distraction. And my husband right there, he says he doesn't like them. So if you want, I can throw some of these out or you can come and get it. The reason I'm bringing this in is because I'm talking about shame. And if you notice that you start checking out or feeling stressed, you guys maybe pass some of those out, then you can put this on your finger and see if it helps. But I've presented on shame many times, and you start getting glossed over eyes. But it's been in the evening, so maybe we are a little bit more lively this morning. I'll pass these around if you want. Don't feel like you have to take one. Okay, so I want to talk about fear and shame. And there's a lot of ways to look at fear and shame. I want to present this in a user-friendly way. My microphone's pulling my necklace. So I want to draw appreciation to the fact that we are internally hardwired for physical and relational safety. We are social beings. I think we understand the physical safety part, the fear. We talk about fear, these things we're afraid of when we're young. The boogeyman's going to get me. The grasshopper's going to eat me. That's one that my daughter shared, and I giggled so hard and then I went to Park City, and we were walking around, and grasshopper, we are like massive problems here. And there was a grown woman who said the same thing. The grasshopper's going to eat me. And we all look, and she laughed. It was fine. She's like, yes, I'm an old lady, and I am afraid of grasshoppers. So we all have these irrational fears, and there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. But if you take down the opposite end of the spectrum, there's debilitating fear that can lead to suicide, addiction relapse. We're going to see extreme OCD on that spectrum. And really appreciating the fact that different times of our life, when our fear spikes, we might be along that spectrum in different places. And understanding, okay, this is my body trying to keep me safe. And I love how Jane talked about the circuits, because that can really help us see that there are circuits in our brain that are misfiring. And because of a concept called neuroplasticity, we can help reroute the brain and teach it how to feel safe again. And so, familiar with shame, we might not be as familiar with fear, we might not be as familiar with shame. Now, shame is a byproduct of not feeling relationally safe. And so it can leave us feeling less than, worthless. And we want to see that there's irrational shame just like there's irrational fear. We've all experienced that, right? I was thinking just earlier, because my husband gives up snow shoveling about March, and I said, okay, I give up weed pulling in September. Well, it is now October, and there's a ton of weeds, and the neighbors are coming over for trick-or-treating. My irrational shame, the neighbors, what are they going to think about my weeds? They don't care. But there is that part of me that comes up. And if they care, they can pull the weeds. I'm not too proud. If you like pulling weeds, come to Wellsville. So we all have these irrational shames, and I can joke around about that. But we're going to put at the other end of that spectrum debilitating shame that leads to depression, a multitude of mental health issues. Shame will be an active participant in. We talked about OCD with fear. There's something called rejection-sensitive dysphoria that 99 to 100% of people with ADHD have. And I've read a lot of research, and it's still, I'm not saying you have to have ADHD to have rejection-sensitive dysphoria, but I'm saying if you have ADHD, you probably have rejection-sensitive dysphoria. And it's very actually empowering to learn about so that you can see that you're not alone in that struggle. For me, and this is how I conceptualize it, I put rejection-sensitive dysphoria at the end of that, because when it's really high, it's looping shame-based thoughts, heat, pit in the stomach, and it's a circuit issue. And for those of us with ADHD, we are functioning with less dopamine, and so it has more to do with the dopamine system. And probably a few other things that I won't get into today. So we want to appreciate that we can be along that spectrum for ourselves and for other people, and that they are not choosing this. Nobody chooses this. These are automatic responses to life, really the choice comes afterwards with the knowledge. And what am I going to do about this? That is where our choice comes in, and that's how we increase our free agency. So these are threat responses, and I'll go into this with the next slide. But I want you to remember, we should only be in a prolonged threat response, like intense fear, intense shame, with imminent danger or horrible moral failing. Weeds in the yard at Halloween doesn't fit. You didn't get your ministering in, not a horrible moral failing. You know, I could name a lot of them. You know, maybe, I won't go into details, but hold grace for yourself. Most of us are doing the best we can. And I would say, really, most of us really are. There's a lot going on in here. So, this information is brought to you through, this is called the polyvagal theory. And this talks about the different physiological states in our body. This is Stephen Porges' work, and I use this a lot as I view a lot of mental health issues through the lens of safety, safe and not safe, fear and shame. I feel like we can take in the world from these lenses, and it can distort reality and give people, places, things more power over us than is naturally suited to be. So, the green zone. Green zone is where we want to be. We're not supposed to be there all the time. The green zone is where we're calm. This is calmness and connection, settled, grounded. Curious, we're more curious. When we're in these heightened states of, we're probably familiar with fight, flight, and freeze, or shutdown. When we're in these states, it's harder to be curious. It's harder to be compassionate. It's harder to be mindful and in the present, because we're losing access to our frontal lobe because your body thinks there's danger or the cops are coming to get you because you've committed a horrible moral failing. And so appreciating this need for safety. We all will go into periods of fight or flight or shutdown. Different things will trigger it. So from this framework, what zone would someone be in to promote greater connection to God? Probably the green zone, right? You're calm. Your body can focus on future-oriented thinking and goal-directed behavior. I don't know, though. As I said that, I thought, I can get really close to God when I'm here and here. Please. But it's more of a panic. It's more of a desperation. We're not meant to be here the whole time, though. We are not meant to build resilience in peaceful waters. But we want to come back down, especially children. Children need a co-regulator to help when their emotions are big and we get mad at them, as we sometimes will. This is not parent shame time. We're just pushing them up or shutting this down, but it doesn't mean they're calm. It doesn't mean they're here if they're quiet. They could easily be there and quiet. So understanding these different states of being so that we can talk about it. We can talk about it with ourselves. We can talk about it with other people. We've got language to their experience. Any thoughts on that? So we can all have a similar experience and be in different states, as evidenced by my next slide. Now, Bernie, I feel bad. I do not like to mock people. But he made this really easy, or whoever started that whole trend. I would love to thank him for the humor he brings into my slide. I know these words are probably a little small and hard to read, but I wanted to put this all on one slide, and message me later and I'll send you my slides if you want. But when we're in this freeze or shutdown state, we have too little or no energy. We're exhausted. So if I go back to this, and then I'll come back. This is arousal increasing. So this is as our stress level rises, as our emotions rise. Your body determines if you're going to go here or here. And so being in that shutdown state, your body's releasing transmitters to numb the pain. We check out. It's too much. It's overwhelming. It's a survival response, like the possum that plays dead. You know, your metabolism can also slow way down. So we're checked out, immobilized, this freeze response. I just kind of want to, like the turtle going in its shell, go in my bed, put the blankets in, don't bug me. Fight or flight, too much energy, we're fidgety, intrusive thoughts, yelling, defensive, hard to register consequences, because once again, our frontal lobe, we don't have as much access to it. We still do have some, hopefully. And then in the green zone, we're curious, compassionate, creative, more effective with our communication skills. This is what I love. It's safe to be me, physically and relationally. And it's safe to be you. And that's where we can learn better how to grow and progress. Kids going to school, here, they're going to have a harder time learning than here. And we build resilience by going in and out of those states. So I'm going to see if you can relate. This cute little one is my daughter. And I want you to see if you can notice when she shifts. She starts calm. Notice when she shifts to fight or flight or shut down. And I think the volume last time started out a little quiet, so I apologize for that. Will you eat your vegetables? Yeah. There's a little fight in her. She's got that. She's feisty. She knows how to get out of things. So what's not so cute and funny, though, is when we are living in these prolonged states for a long time. It's fine when it's your vegetables, and she did get out of eating those vegetables, by the way. But when we're living that way, even on the inside and on the outside, we got this smiley face, perfect hair, whatever it is, so that nobody thinks and has any idea of what's going on the inside. It can feel pretty scary and vulnerable. So, we're going to go back to the be still and know. Now this again is Stephen Porges. It says, thus it is proposed that the consequences of feeling safe provide the neural platform for cooperative behaviors, not doormat behaviors, not people-pleasing behaviors. That is not cooperative. Cooperative is reciprocal. Cooperative behaviors, both supporting the physiological systems and enabling accessibility to higher brain structures, executive functioning, gift to humans, for learning, creativity, appreciation of aesthetics, I don't think I say that word right, and even spirituality. So as we think about we are spiritual beings, we're not meant to live in a shutdown mode, in a fight or flight mode. And because of that, we do have capacities that can help us re-regulate the nervous system and return to a sense of safety. But we need each other to do that too. Okay, so while our genes play a role in our overall emotional and physical well-being, the current research would suggest that our experiences overlay our genetics. So we don't want to minimize our genes. We definitely do not want to minimize our life experiences. They play a huge role in our overall mental and physical well-being. And just as a little side note, and this is something I've just started learning more about this year that's been mind-blowing for me, is, let's say, for example, the study was done with youth in OCD, but they found that youth with OCD, in the study, that these youth with OCD also had a hard time absorbing their B vitamins. So mental health isn't always just taken care of in the therapy office. We need to address it nutritionally too, in our gut health. And with treating them with B vitamins, I believe the statistical significance of that was wonderful. And just supplementing with B vitamins. That's not going to be for everybody. But just as this, just to get you something to think about. I do think you should be in therapy if you've got mental health concerns. But the more and more I study this, though, the more and more I realize sometimes mental health therapy involves eating cleaner involves taking care of, well, I think it always involves eating cleaner and taking care of your body. But the gut health can play a big and contributing role in mental health too. So our experiences can tune our nervous system to be more sensitive to danger and fear, as well as rejection and shame. Our experiences can also tune us into being more open and engaged with others in life. This is where we maximize our personal growth and potential. Okay, so we want to talk about fear. Now this face, you might see this face in this room right now because I asked him to send me a picture of fear. And I just put that little mouse and spider there because fear can really distort reality. So fear is a natural, innate response. You have circuits in your brain working hard to keep you safe. I love this acronym for fear. False evidence appearing real, or forget everything and run. What we fear, we fuel the power it has over us. We don't want to fear our worth. I think there's a great poem, Williamson is her last name, and she talks about what we fear is our greatness. I'm totally messing it up, but it's a great poem, and it really hit home to me personally too. So fear also fuels chronic pain and can keep our pain circuits in our brain going long after the injury is healed. There's also can be a genetic link to that as well. And so understanding the impact that can be treated with healthy and clean eating and things like that. So another fear, more about fear, reminders. We don't want to fear anything that's in our body. Everything in our body is designed to keep us safe and move us in a direction of health and growth. Our body really is a gift, and sometimes we feel like it abandons us, and I really want to give a shout out to those dealing with physical, chronic mental or physical issues. It's tough, and my heart goes out to you. There's a lot of things that our body is doing for us that we take for granted and we don't even fully appreciate. We want to decrease and erase fear around feeling the shame sensation. We don't want to fear shame. We don't want to fear that uncomfortable sensation. It gives us, a plethora of negative thoughts, and we should actually be able to have a lot of thoughts and feelings on every situation, not just the ones that automatically come when we're activated. So we want to really get curious with what shame feels like in our body. That can sometimes be easier than dealing with the thoughts and fighting those thoughts, because we can evoke more fear and refuel it. And so wanting to also talk about the fact that we still need to be accountable, and your body will prioritize physical safety and then it looks to relational safety. So now we're going to talk about relational safety. And is that not the cutest cow ever? And as long as I don't run out, I have a shame cow for everybody here if you want it. Cow, C-O-W, condition of worth. There is no condition to your worth. If that comes, you're dealing with irrational shame. You may have done something wrong and need to be accountable, but I would say most of us are doing our best. Human error is not a shame response. Most of the time. I don't want to hit every nuance thing. My brain wants to, but just in general terms. But we can feel. Have you ever had that feeling like maybe you ran over your neighbor's dog on purpose when you just forgot somebody's birthday? Or the neighbor's coming over and you have weeds in the garden. It can really feel yucky. And that, my friend, is a circuit issue. And so helping the front of your brain relabel, that is a circuit issue. The judge is not issuing a warrant for my arrest because of this, so that you can hold a little bit more space and grace for yourself and other people. Because shame's acronym should have already mastered everything, and so should everybody else. They're making me crazy. But you'll notice a feeling in your body too when shame is activated. And so helping your mind see that we are safe, false alarm, and sometimes it's easier than others, but you can put this cow in your view where it's easier to think about and not take your shame so seriously. And it's cute, right? It's cute. usually felt in the gut or chest. Where there's perfectionism, there is shame. And okay, so this is kind of fun. If you want a good definition of shame-based behaviors, we're going to take the opposite of charity. So I took the definition of charity from the King James Version Bible. Charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up. Doth not behave itself unseemingly. Seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked. Thinketh no evil. Rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in truth. Beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Charity never faileth. That's a lot. Okay, now we're going to, because everything has an opposite, in order for it to exist, that's a universal law, we're going to do anti-charity, and this is Julie Swensen version. And this is our definition of shame. This is not evidence-based, by the way. Shame suffereth long, it feels like forever, and it is not kind. Shame envieth, shame vaunteth itself, is definitely puffed up and puffed down. So far down you feel small and want to hide on the inside. Shame doth behave itself unseemingly. After all, YOLO, you only live once. Seeketh her own. Dang shame can be so easily provoked. Thinketh evil all the time for some people, and usually about oneself though. We really can be mean and hard on ourselves. It rejoiceth in iniquity and ignoreth the truth, especially when it serves them. Does not beareth all things. Shame is heavy and exhausting. Believeth only what it wants, hard to hold on to, hopeth of anything. It filleth like it endureth forever. Shame filleth like we faileth, because after all, it is a horrible moral failing to have weeds in the flower bed when the neighbor stops by. You'll never look at that definition of charity the same, will you? If you read the Book of Mormon one is great too. I knew I wouldn't have enough time to share both of those, but we can really see the purpose that shame does serve in our life when you look at the opposition in all things. And maybe it's here on some level to help us grow, but don't stone me for saying that. It really is cool to learn how to work with your shame and to not take it so seriously. So, how can I help myself and others? So, what we want to do is have a greater awareness and understanding of perfectionism, even within ourselves, with other people, how it manifests in you, and get more comfortable in the uncertainty of life. Like for me, as I thought about this perfectionism and I'm doing my project, or doing this even, I was like, okay, Julie, what's your fear? Because, I'm activated, I'm feeling it in my gut and chest, and I was like, I'm going to be spewing off things that are so not true, and somebody's going to stand up and yell and say, you're telling lies. We want to be able to look in and be like, maybe, maybe not. Invite it into uncertainty. Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes reassurance isn't the best way to deal with perfectionism. It's we want to get comfortable in the uncertainty of life. And then our frontal lobe can come online more and really help us kind of come into that wise mind too, that, it's probably going to be okay. I'm seeing lots of faces out here that I know and love. We want to reduce and eliminate judgment. This is a big one, I think, that we might overlook. Talking negatively about yourself and other people in your relationships will not build trust in your relationships. Because we are relational creatures. And so if I'm talking bad about somebody, did you hear what Allison did the other day? You might be thinking about Julie. What does Julie say about me? And that's kind of icky. We're relational creatures. And we do impact each other. And so when I'm talking nicely about somebody, doesn't it feel nice to be around people that speak kindly? There's one thing if you're trying to resolve issues or things like that, being productive. But just in general, we shoot ourselves in the foot when we are judging, talking harshly of other people, and being mindful of that because we automatically respond to life. We want to appreciate diversity on the micro, meso, and macro level. There is so much good in the world. There are so many amazing ways to look at life and get it right. And when we can see that in the world, it can make it easier to internalize it in us. And when we internalize it in us more, it can make it easier to see that in the world. And the beauty of this is when we feel safe and we're in that green zone, we're actually better able to detect accurately the real threats in the world. The real threats in the world aren't the people that are looking different than you, doing things different than you, unless you're being injured by them or oppressed by them. We should not go into fight or flight for non-life-threatening situations, and judgment is one of them. So it's a great way to get curious with what's going on inside of you. We want to be a cue of safety and validate the struggles. Jane talked about this too, that there's safety and validation. If your emotions are safe with me, you don't have to have life all figured out. I don't either. Just holding space for what they're feeling without trying to fix it. That's icky, and it puts your agenda on how you think they should be feeling rather than how they are feeling. So give and receive authentic compliments. Look for ways of appreciating the unique greatness of others, including yourself. Remember, you're one of 117 billion heads that have walked the earth. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of ways to get life right. We want to reduce myopic views and help place value on what is of greatest importance, especially when we're stuck in these little perfectionistic conundrums. What is of greatest importance here? What do I want to accomplish? So as human beings, we have a right to feel safe from preventable physical threat and threat in our social and relational interactions. We have an individual accountability to care for our nervous system and a shared relational accountability to facilitate a sense of safety and belonging to those we engage with. We're all part of systems. And we are not only impactful in our relationships, but we are impacted by those around us. For better or worse, we are social beings and what we do matters. Honestly, I think most of what I deal with is shame. And so learning how to work with it, understand it, smile at it when you feel it, take it for a walk. Don't take it too seriously. Ask it what it needs. Ask it how you can be there for it. It's really beautiful when you can build the capacity, easier said than done, and you really might need to do this with a therapist, but when you can build the capacity to tolerate and work through your shame, I don't think there's a greater gift you can give your future self, besides maybe $1 million. So this is Thomas Enzel. He's the former director of the National Institute of Mental Health. He talks about the circuits that Jane talked about too. Brain regions that function together to carry out normal mental operations can be thought of as analogous to electrical circuits. And the latest research, this was in 2011, I think though, shows that malfunctioning entire circuits may be underlying many mental disorders. So this is a common circuit issue. This is found in brain lock. This is Jeffrey Schwartz's work. I didn't make it up. But this is something that I help people with in my office a lot. And as we understand this fear circuit, and obviously in my office I go into therapy mode, and that I'm not doing here. But this is a common circuit, and we talk about 3 areas of the brain. The orbital prefrontal cortex that sits right, this is my brain. These aren't my eyes. Just think of this is your brain that's trying to keep you safe. It's always on the lookout. And so the orbital prefrontal cortex sits right behind the eyes, and it receives the sensory input coming in from your body, which 80%, I believe, of our experience, somebody might be able to correct me there, is sensory. Our sensory system plays a huge role in our mental health. And it also takes in the outside world. And it tries to translate it and figure it out because it likes certainty. So it might slap a label on there just because you have a funny feeling in your gut, and then it slaps a label that you're worthless. And then that threat sounds the alarms. The cingulate gyrus, or cortex, sometimes it's called the cingulate cortex, is that yellow area. That is connected to your chest and gut. That helps facilitate the fight or flight response. You're going to have stress hormones going through your body, which is important if the skunk is out to get you, or the bear, or the burglar in the house. Outside of imminent danger, or horrible moral failing, the cops are coming to get you, or you're going to end up in a judge, and eventually, if you keep this up, we shouldn't have those alarms going off. If we do, false alarm. Take your shame for a walk, hot bath, cold bath. Those are supposed to work really great. I'm too chicken for them. but learning how to work with your body rather than against it. This is a circuit issue, and this drives a lot of mental health issues. The last one down there, I know that's a busy picture, it's called the caudate nucleus. It's deeper in the brain, and that is supposed to help us filter out thoughts, because we should be able to have a lot of thoughts and feelings. Jeffrey Schwartz refers to the caudate as it gets sticky, like an old gear shifter on a truck that won't shift gears to allow these thoughts to flow through. It stuck because it thinks there's danger. So it loops these thoughts back up. It's obviously more complex than that, but anyway. We get stuck in the loop. Looping thoughts, activation here when there's no horrible moral failing, you're just laying in bed trying to sleep, or you've had a vague memory of 5th grade and getting bullied or made fun of. Ooh, it can feel horrible. We want to help reorient the brain and body to present moment safety, and then go in and care for ourselves if there's other things involved there. So really quickly, because I know I'm running out of time, this is the brain in the green zone. This is a brain activated. That red is energy usage. That energy is coming from somewhere. Can you guess where it's coming from? It's coming from the physiological systems that help you help your body maintain functioning, health. When we're living in these zones, like the yellow and red, we're pulling energy away from digesting, which helps us absorb nutrients, and those nutrients in turn help with our neurotransmitters too. So living in this state for too long, no bueno. You're going to have mental health issues, physical health issues. Over time, they catch up with us, right? If we don't look at them. Okay, I've got 1 minute left. I want to talk really quickly about the back of the brain, the reticular activating system. And I should probably put this at the front, but it doesn't flow if I put it at the front. I'm going to show you something really fast. So look really quickly at what the reticular activating system does. And this is something I do frequently, especially I went back to school to get my PhD, and my brain is busy. So the back of the brain, I'm going to put this down. I think it's like the neglected child. It's really cool back there. And the reticular activating system takes in all of our sensory input, minus smell. Smell goes right to the amygdala. And it sends it to other parts of the brain. And so this information coming up from our body has to go through the reticular activating system and other parts of the brain there. But what we want to do, it's just a simple activity that you can do at home, is I have this ice pack. This is my friend. And it goes on the back of my brain. And I'll put music on, put this back here. We actually stumbled across the beauty of this. I'm in therapy with a client, and it was amazing. And so I Googled it. What are the benefits of putting ice behind your head? And the Chinese beat me to it. I thought I was going to have like the best-selling invention. But it's called a Feng Fu point, and it's a Chinese acupuncture point back there. And so I didn't make it up, if that helps put some validity to it. But I will sit and just take a few deep breaths, go to the back of my brain, ask it to help close the mental tabs, clear the mental stage. Sometimes it works better than others, but it works if it works for you. So I invite you to try that and see what you think. You can use a cold water bottle and deep breaths. Get curious, and if you can bring in some compassion for what your mind and body are doing. This is where we're going to have, like, north meets south. I like to think of it that way. And if we can support these systems in our brain, we're not our brain, we have a brain. It in turn can support us to live as healthy and happy as possible and thrive in our relationships. So I thank you for coming out.